Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Listen and Learn session for the conceptual draft rules to implement the alcohol to-go endorsements created by House Bill 1480. I am Audrey Vasic, the Policy and Rules Coordinator with LCB, and joining me today to help facilitate, take notes, and assist with technical questions are Policy and Rules Coordinator Jeff Kildall and the Administrative Professional with our unit, Tierney Hamilton Steele. Other staff that have helped develop these conceptual draft rules are also online today and listening in. So just as a reminder, this is a public work session and is being recorded. The recording and chat are public records and will go on the LCB webpage, lcb.wa.gov, later this week or early next week. So before we get started, I wanted to go through the agenda. I'll start by speaking on, some of how we are going to collect data and share it, meeting protocol. We'll do some brief introductions. I'll give some background on the rulemaking process before we get into eliciting structured feedback on the conceptual draft rule sections. So with that, I will get my PowerPoint up here. So our overall meeting goal today is to engage with industry partners and any other interested partners to review the conceptual draft rules. We'll go through each of the sections, elicit feedback in a structured fashion, and discuss next steps. So why are we here? House Bill 1480, which was passed this last session, created temporary alcohol to-go endorsements to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, these endorsements, which are available until July 1, 2023, allow certain licensees to engage in curbside takeout or delivery sales, which for short we call to-go sales of cocktails and wine by the glass, growlers, and certain other alcohol products. The agency is currently in the CR 101 or inquiry phase of the rulemaking process to implement House Bill 1480, and our pre-proposal statement of inquiry was filed on May 12, 2021. Your feedback during today's forum will help inform and shape these rules. So how will the data be collected, shared, and presented to decision makers? So all of the comments and feedback we receive today will be added to a table organized by theme and analyzed. This table will be presented to the board for review and will be published on our website at a later date. So meeting protocol. There's three main roles today. Facilitator, I'll be helping guide the discussion. Other LCB staff are on the line to help assist with that and jump in as necessary if questions come up. And participants, that's all of you, and encourage you to put questions in the chat or raise your hand virtually where necessary using that raise hand feature as we go through to offer your feedback. So, first and foremost, this is a forum to share ideas and solutions, not a forum for debate. We'll want to stay on topic today. The topic is those alcohol to-go endorsements. Now, 1480 also covered outdoor alcohol service areas and food service requirements, and we'll have a separate listen and learn on that topic later this month. So if you have other topics you want to discuss, please do reach out to us, schedule time, and we will be happy to meet with you outside of this forum. Everyone is encouraged to participate, so don't hesitate to raise your hand and we will call on you. Please maintain a respectful space, listen to and respect other points of view. And when you do speak, when we unmute you, state your name, where you're from, and feel free to turn on your video too if you'd like. One person speaks at a time. Please do not interrupt others. And again, since this is a public forum, anything shared today has the potential to become part of a public record, and that includes whatever text or comments you type in the chat. So the meeting format for today, as we go through the sections, I'll introduce the topic, and folks will be asked to speak in the order that the virtual hands are raised using that virtual hand raise feature. So it might look different depending if you've logged in through your browser or if you've logged in through the desktop application. But up by if you're on your desktop application, up at the top to the left of your video and mute options, you should see a raise hand button. If you're on your browser, you should also see a raise hand button just in the center of your screen. If you're having technical difficulties, please do feel free to reach out to one of us through the chat and we'll try and assist you. So when it comes your turn to speak, please state what you like and don't like about the rule, and if possible, offer alternative language for each rule section. So we'll just do some brief introductions now. If folks could please find the chat box and put your name, who you're affiliated with or represent, if you're comfortable sharing, and why you're interested in the topic. I'll give a minute or so here, and we can just keep putting that information in throughout this meeting today. So I see a couple folks are starting to enter. The chat option, in case you're having difficulty finding that too, is also by the raise hand feature at the top. It looks like a chat bubble. Okay, so I will give a brief overview of the rulemaking process before we jump in. So there are three main phases in the rulemaking process: the inquiry phase, proposal phase, and adoption phase. And keep in mind, this is just the typical standard rulemaking process. There are other ways out there. It could take longer or slower, but it may take several months to a couple years to complete, just depending on availability of resources, complexity of the issue, availability of data, and the level of public interest in the rules. So right now with 1480, we are in this CR 101 inquiry phase. We're doing stakeholder engagement, rule development, drafting, and analysis. Once we develop conceptual draft rules, once we revise those conceptual draft rules and have a rule proposal ready, we'll file a CR 102, moving to the proposal phase. This is where the board will hold a public hearing and can offer formal public comment this way. So everything we're offering today is actually informal and fits under this inquiry phase. Once the rule proposal is complete and we've had a chance to review public comments, eventually we'll move down to the CR 103 or adoption phase, where the board votes to approve rules and the rules become effective. This is just a flow chart kind of describing the typical flow that this takes. Again, we're right in this phase right now. And I will not read through all this content, but these slides will be available on our website after the meeting today. So just in general, the inquiry phase or CR 101 phase, it's really a pre-proposal where we're exploring the issues, gathering the ideas, gathering the background and data, and meeting with stakeholders to develop rules, whether that's through listen and learn sessions like today, rule workshops, or other forms of inclusive stakeholder development. This is where we also begin doing the required analysis in the Administrative Procedure Act and the Regulatory Fairness Act. The second phase of the rulemaking process, the CR 102, this is where we file a proposed rulemaking order with the code revisor, and the formal review and comment process begins. The CR 102 form itself will provide information for the date, time, and location of our public hearing and how you can submit formal comment. And the final phase, after the public hearing and review period, will compile all of the formal comments received and create a concise explanatory statement with the agency's responses to those comments before the board makes a final decision on whether or not to adopt the rules. I've provided a estimated rulemaking timeline here for 1480, and keep in mind this is tentative at this point because the rulemaking process could take longer or slower, just depending on the amount of feedback and the type of feedback we receive. But right now we are, again, here in August, we are doing the listen and learn sessions, developing conceptual draft rules. And after the listen and learn session today, we'll review the public feedback and decide whether or not, consider any revisions suggested and decide whether or not to revise those before moving on to the next phase. Right now, we're hoping to finalize the rules by the end of December. Okay, so that concludes my overview of the rulemaking process, and uh, we're ready to dive into the conceptual draft. And before we do that, I want to give a brief overview of the three components we have today, the three types of alcohol to go endorsements. That's the cocktails and wine by the glass, the growlers, and the other alcohol products. And 1480 stated that there's no fee for these endorsements. So we'll start today with the cocktails and wine by the glass. And again, just as a reminder, we'll go through subsection by subsection. I'll put up the language here in a bit. And please, when you raise your hand, state what you like, what you don't like, and suggested revisions. And if you could provide actual language for consideration, that would be extremely helpful for us as well. So I'm going to put those up on the screen, and then my fellow rules coordinator, Jeff Kildall, will help unmute folks in the order that their hands have been raised. So give me one moment as I get those rules up there. Okay, so hopefully you all can see this. Jeff, is this coming through on your end?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So we'll start with we'll go through subsection by subsection. So starting with the first one here in the highlighted text, does anyone have feedback they want to offer on this piece? And if so, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. And if you're having difficulty with that, please type in the chat and we will try to unmute you that way. This first section really just states that what the bill said, which is that it's available till July 1, 2023, and there's no fee for a licensee to apply for and obtain this endorsement. Jeff, are you seeing any hands or anything in the chat at all about this one?
No, not so far.
Okay, so that one was pretty straightforward. So I'll just move on to our next subsection here. This gets into what licensees are eligible for this endorsement. So in this case, again, this is from the bill, the cocktails to go endorsement or the wine by the glass that is available for spirits, beer, and wine restaurants. And then for beer, wine restaurants, it's available, but just for the wine by the glass and the premixed wine drinks. So was there any feedback folks had on subsection 2A or B?
Hi, Audrey. I do see one question in the chat.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and read that out or unmute the...
Sure, I can read it out from the chat. I see it's from Kevin Stanley, and his question is, why not allow wine by the bottle?
So I can answer that. This is what was allowed with 1480. So this is just for the premixed cocktails, cocktail kits, wine by the glass, the premixed wine and spirits cocktails. there are the two other endorsements, the Growlers and the other alcohol products would cover, either the Growler scenario or for the larger wine products that are in the manufacturer sealed. So we will, if you have feedback to offer on that other endorsement, we'll get to that later this session. Do we have any other? Well, I guess if that doesn't answer your question, please do follow up in the chat. And then in the meantime, Jeff, if we want to mute or unmute the other folks who have their hands raised.
Okay, I see one other question in the chat from Tony Clark. And his question is, what constitutes a mini bottle? Airline bottles less than 750 milliliters. For example, 375 milliliters, question mark.
So that is also, defined in the bill, but I would just like to, so I'll scroll down there, but also remind folks we're trying to get feedback on, these specific sections one by one. So if we could hold those type of questions till the end of the section after we get feedback from folks, we can tackle all of those ones that aren't directly related one by one. So I apologize for all the scrolling, folks. It's kind of a long section, but so mini bottles was defined in the bill, original factory sealed containers holding not more than 50 milliliters of a spirituous beverage. So appreciate those questions and comments, and we will get to those, but let's turn back up to that subsection 2. And do we have anyone else with feedback on subsection 2? Are there any hands raised, Jeff?
Yeah, hi, Audrey. I see Ron Keller has his hand raised. So I can go ahead and unmute him for his question. Okay, Ron, I'll unmute you now. Go ahead, Ron. Hi, Ron, are you there?
So it does look like Ron is unmuted, but if you're having technical difficulties, please feel free to type your comment in the chat too. We'll give it a little bit more time, and then if no one else has their hand raised, I guess we can go to the next subsection here. Is Ron typing anything in the chat, Jeff?
No, I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay, Ron, we'll get back to you later, and if you're having some difficulties, maybe Tierney, you can reach out to Ron and see if you're able to troubleshoot with him. So we will go to the third subsection, and this is really where the kind of bulk of the section is. So subsection 3, in order to maintain the endorsement described in this section, licensees must meet the following requirements. So starting with A, for spirit, beer, wine restaurants, food that qualifies as a complete meal must be sold with the alcohol products authorized for sale under this section, and spirits, beer, wine restaurants can sell up to 3 ounces of spirits per complete meal. So are there any feedback? So again, what you like about this, what you don't like, suggestions for revisions. So I think I see a number of hands now if we want to go through and unmute Jeff.
Okay, Audrey, I see that Ron has entered his question in the chat, so I can read it. His question is, can they be pre-mixed in glasses or do they have to be separate?
So I'm not sure I fully understand that question, but we can attempt to address that at the end. But I'd like to go through first and get the feedback and comments on each of these and hold the questions for the end. Sorry, Ron, if you could explain a little bit more about what you mean with that question, that'd be helpful for me too. And maybe some of the other staff here might be able to help assist with that one also. But let's go through you know, the the feedback of what folks like and don't like and suggestions for revisions.
Okay, I see that Mary Sagawa has her hand raised, so I will unmute her for her question.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is Mary Sagawa. I'm a prevention and public health consultant. And I would like to say that I really appreciate the requirement for food for a meal be sold with alcohol. We know that food will assist in keeping people safer as they're consuming alcohol. I am concerned about the limit on 3 ounces of spirits per complete meal with no limit on other alcoholic drinks. 3 ounces generally is equivalent to considered 2 servings. So we're saying 2 standard drinks per meal, but there's no limit of number of standard drinks for other types of alcohol. And I would appreciate seeing a limit. My recommendation would be 1 standard drink per meal served. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary, for that feedback. So just so everyone knows, I am taking notes as we go through, so appreciate that. Was there anything else, Mary?
That's all for that section. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Jeff, it looks like we also have Katie Doyle with her hand raised.
Yes, I will unmute Katie. Okay, go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, Jeff and Audrey. And I am in a coffee shop in Montana, so sorry if my sound quality is highly questionable. We do echo some of Mary's sentiments on the appreciation for meals to be included with the sale of spirits to go. But while we do think that 3 ounces is normally equivalent to 2 beverages, we do have a number of operators that are selling larger quantities as like a family package. So they're selling like beverages that include more than 2 drinks. So maybe they're 3, maybe it's something like sangria. So we are making the request that the 3 ounces be moved up to at least 4 ounces with each complete meal. And that's all I got on that section.
Thank you very much, Katie. And your audio sounded just fine. So for folks who have already spoken, if you want to speak again, great, leave your hand up. But if not, please do lower your hand so we know whether or not you're trying to speak again on that subject. But it looks like we also have Trillium Swanson. Trillium, are you able to unmute yourself? Okay, I see Trillium put in the chat she's having trouble unmuting. So, Tierney, I don't know if you can help troubleshoot with Trillium on that, and we can return to your comment later, Trillium, or you can also type it into the chat. So,
Hey, Audrey, I can try to unmute Trillium. Let me try here.
okay, while you try to do that, I will move to the next person with their hand raised, and it looks like we have Tony Clark. So I will allow your mic, Tony, and you should have the option now.
I do indeed. Thank you. Well, I just want to revisit this limitation thing. 3 ounces or 4 ounces. Now, maybe I'm misreading this, but are we talking just spirits, or are we talking beer and wine as well here in terms of limitation? Because 4 ounces of wine is not even a standard glass of wine, and likewise for beer. Furthermore, I would suggest that I can walk into a restaurant, sit down, order a bottle of wine with my meal. So why would I be limited into what I can deliver to a person's home, which I understand the safety concern, but to me, they're at home. So we've already eliminated the potentially drunk driving situation. I mean, unless they have a meal, drink, and go driving. But of course, you have the same problem in a restaurant. So I guess I'm just, what I like or don't like. I'm not sure I like the limitation as it sits, because honestly, at this point, the value of delivering 3 ounces of spirits to my business is minimal. And this also seems to kind of directly contradict other endorsements, such as the ability to sell growlers and bottles of wine to go. So it seems like to me this is confusing the way it is written in this endorsement, and again, contradictory to other endorsements. And I'll mute now.
Thanks for that feedback, Tony. Yeah, we can certainly look at ways to make this clear, but the to your question about does it apply to beer and wine, the answer is it wasn't intended to. It does say 3 ounces of spirits, so just for the spirits, as in the cocktail to go type of the containers that are not, the closed bottles. So if you have suggestions though for how we can make it clear, would love to see that language too, and feel free to put it in the chat or send it to us at our rules inbox, which is rules@lcb.wa.gov. So maybe Jeff or Tierney can type that in the chat too. If folks have suggestions on how to for new language or clear language, we'd love to see that. So thanks again, Tony. And I see your hand is still up. If you don't have anything else, please do go ahead and lower that. And let's see if Trillium is able to unmute herself now. Okay. Um, I apologize. You're having technical difficulties there, Trillium, and Ron as well. So we will. I don't see any other hands at this point. Definitely appreciate the chat and the comments there. I will move to the sub 2 here, which is for the beer and wine restaurants. So for the folks that have they can do the wine by the glass or the premixed wine drinks. A food item that qualifies as minimum food service must be sold with alcohol products authorized for sale under this section. And we did not put the rules do not have a limit on the size of the alcohol product, because in this case it's just those premixed wine drinks or the wine by the glass. So are there any comments specifically on just the beer wine portion here? I recognize there's probably a lot of overlap between those two, so no need to repeat it if it's the same, but if there's anything new folks would like to add, please go ahead and raise your hand or put it in the chat. Okay, I am not seeing any new hands. I know there's stuff coming in through the comments, and we appreciate that, and we'll go through the chat later and collect those. So um, the next piece in here, the alcohol products authorized for sale under this section must be prepared the same day they are sold. And so just again, remember, we're talking here in this endorsement only about the premixed wine drinks, wine by the glass, the cocktails to go. So that's in reference to those alcohol products. If there's any feedback on that, please do go ahead and raise your hand. I think that one is pretty straightforward. So I'll also read sub C and we can kind of cover those both. If something comes up for B, feel free to address it now also. But so for sub C, the alcohol products authorized for sale under this section must be packaged in a container that has been sealed in a manner designed to prevent consumption without removal of the tamper evident lid cap or seal. So this is kind of a long section, so I won't read all of it, but we define tamper evident. So it's a lid cap or seal that visibly demonstrates when a container has been opened, does not include tape. And then it includes some examples here. So the following list of examples is not comprehensive, but we do have examples of types of containers that are allowed. So those include containers with a screw top, cap, or lid that breaks apart when the container is opened, or a container with a plastic heat shrink wrap band, strip, or sleeve extending around the cap or lid to form a seal. That can be something, like with a heat gun that you use to seal around a cap. And then sub C here, vacuum or heat sealed pouches without holes or openings for straws. And then for the examples of containers that are not allowed, anything with a sipping hole or a lid with a sipping hole or opening for a straw, or, like a styrofoam paper plastic cup that doesn't have any sort of lid, tamper evident lid cap or seal. So I will stop talking there and would love to hear whatever feedback folks have, what they like, don't like, suggestions for different language when it comes to these tamper evident containers.
Hi, Audrey. We have a question from Kelsey Curran, so I will try to unmute now. Okay, go ahead, Kelsey.
Hi, this is Kelsey Curran, and I'm a restaurant owner. And I just want to put my 2 cents in for allowing for the tape to be a seal. I understand it's not allowed as it's currently written, and it would be incredibly helpful. And I think a lot of businesses are already doing this anyway. But that's tamper evident tape is 4, and the other containers are cost prohibitive. So that's really all I have.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Kelsey. I might want to follow up with you after or outside of this meeting and learn more about the kind of options you're describing, the tape and whatnot, or if you can share a little more now, that might be helpful to the tamper evident tape, what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, sure. So I've seen a lot of restaurants, using a standard to-go cup, like for a hot drink, the same kind of coffee cup you would get at a coffee shop, or for a cold drink, what you would get, what you would typically see a soft drink served in, with tamper evident tape that completely seals over the top. So if someone tried to remove the lid or remove the tape, it's really obvious that that's happening. So it's not just like a piece of Scotch tape or masking tape. It's tape designed to show that it's been tampered with. Usually red when I've seen it.
Thank you for that. It's helpful to have examples, so I appreciate that. Was there anything else you had to offer on this section?
Nothing else on this section.
Thank you. So I think I don't see any other hands. Jeff, was there anything in the chat that we need to address on this one?
Let's see, we do have a comment in the chat. We do have Trillium's comment, and it reads, the comment I would like to make in support of a limitation of 1 to 2 drinks of spirits per meal, pre-mixed cocktails. There is increased risk of access by youth in the home and other environments if more than 1 drink is being delivered per adult receiving a meal. This is a simple way of reducing likelihood that drinks are being purchased for underaged individuals.
Thanks for reading that out, Jeff. Was there anything else in there about the tamper evident and the containers?
No, I don't see anything about the tamper evident containers. There is one other comment in the chat from Linda Thompson, and it is as follows. According to the Washington State Department of Health's Alcohol Drug Information School, ADIS, workbook for the ADIS classes, a standard drink is a 12-ounce beer at 5% alcohol, 5 ounces of wine at 12% alcohol, or 1.5 ounces of liquor, 80 proof, 40% alcohol.
Okay, thank you for that comment. And thanks everyone who's been writing into the chat. So I see Ron and Kelsey, your hands are both still raised, and I just want to double check if you still have more to offer on this. Otherwise, please do lower your hand if you're able to. So Kelsey, if you have more to offer, oh, okay. I see you just lowered your hand. Okay. So if there's nothing else on the container portion, I'll move to sub D here. This has to do with marking or labeling the containers. So the containers the alcohol products are authorized for sale under this section are packaged in, must be clearly marked or labeled with the words, quote, contains alcohol for persons 21 plus, end quote. The words must be of a size that is legible and readily visible. And then the second component of this is if the container of alcohol, so if like the cocktail to go, is enclosed inside a bag box or other packaging before provided to the customer, either through that curbside takeout or delivery service, the exterior of that bag, box, or packaging must be marked with those same words. So contains alcohol for persons 21 plus. Are there any comments, feedback, what you like, don't like, suggestions to make this clearer or revise it? Okay, it looks like we have Megan Moore with her hand raised, so I will unmute you, and Megan, hopefully you're able to speak now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Megan Moore, Kitsap Public Health District. I appreciate this wording here. Having an actual marker for persons 21 and over to distinguish the different, an alcoholic drink versus, in a previous example, someone mentioned just a regular coffee cup or soda cup. We know that there has been a higher incidence of accidental exposure by youth drinking out of a cup that is unmarked. Also, it's pretty easy to conceal in vehicles and for people doing public consumption of alcohol if the cup is not marked. And I just want to point out that this could be pretty cost effective. You can buy a roll of stickers by the 1,000 for like under $20. So I just want to point that out. And then also one thing I would like to see added is that that this shouldn't be able, like the markings shouldn't be wipeable. Like if you were to, even a Sharpie on a wet cup it can wipe off. So I just want to have that be clear.
Thanks for that feedback, Megan. Was there anything else anyone has to add on this section? I don't see any other hands. Jeff, is there anything in the chat?
I see a comment from Amanda Duggar saying that she agrees and says that she would rather see stickers and not markers as well.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Jeff, for reading that. I see Kelsey has Kelsey Curran has her hand raised, so I will. You can go ahead and unmute yourself now, Kelsey.
Just a clarifying question. So we would need to mark the physical cup, which seems totally reasonable to me. But we would also, like, if someone, like if we had a pre-mixed cocktail in a jar and we were bagging it up with like a salad, the bag, that even if the container is marked, the bag also needs to be marked. Is that right? Just to clarify.
Correct. If it's enclosed in there where you can't, yeah, if it's inside a bag, then it would have to be marked as well under the draft rules.
Okay. I think that seems like overkill if the container itself is marked, but that's just my opinion.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that feedback. So when you're, just to follow up on that, is the suggestion then you'd like to not have any requirement on the bag, box, or packaging?
I think if the container itself that has the alcohol in it is clearly marked, I don't think that the bag that is in should have to also be marked.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Kelsey. And we have another hand, it looks like. I will go ahead and unmute Mary Sagawa. So, or go ahead and unmute yourself. you should have the ability, Mary, to speak now.
Oh, I'm sorry. It
That's okay.
automatically remuted. I wanted to say that I support having the outside container marked to ensure that the delivery person asks for ID when delivering to the location. I think if the alcohol is inside the container, there's the chance of that ID check not happening when the delivery is made to the home. And so I support having the outside of the bag or box marked. Thank you.
Thanks for that feedback, Mary. It looks like we also have Ron Keller. Was there something else you wanted to add there, Mary? Okay, hearing nothing, I guess, Ron, are you able to speak now? I know you were having trouble earlier, but on my end, it looks like your mic is enabled. Okay, Jeff, is there anything in the chat from Ron that we can read out?
Let's see, I do see that Ron said the sticker can be peeled off, so he recommends pre-marked cups.
Okay, thanks for that feedback, Ron. Sorry you're still having those technical difficulties. Is there anything else in the chat, Jeff, on this section?
I see a comment from Allison Sanders. Her comment is, I would like to see the bag marked as containing alcohol. Marker seems fine, no sticker necessary. And I see a comment from Megan Moore. A pre-printed cup would be best practice, but also cost prohibitive for some.
Well, thank you everyone for that feedback. I do want to clarify with the current draft language, it's not saying it has to be a sticker or a marker or pre-printed. It sort of leaves that flexibility in there to do the marking as long as it's clearly marked and legible and visible. And I see Kelsey has her hand up again, so go ahead and speak.
Thanks so much. And I totally hear the comment on the delivery bag, especially if that driver, I mean, I would hope that they're familiar with what's in the order and that something in, you know, on the ticket that says what they're delivering would indicate that they need to check ID. In a restaurant setting where a patron is walking inside and interacting directly with a staff, it again seems like overkill, but I totally hear the comment on delivery, and that's all I have.
Well, thank you very much, Kelsey. So we'll take into consideration all this feedback on that we've received today and incorporate that in the table, as well as, you know, figure out how we want to incorporate that in the rules. So this is very helpful to have these ideas and suggestions. I see that we have, was there anything else you wanted to add, Kelsey, before I move to the next person? Okay, so Linda Thompson, I will go ahead and allow your microphone, and you should be able to unmute yourself.
Great. This is Linda Thompson with the Greater Spokane Substance Abuse Council and Washington Association for Substance Abuse and Violence Prevention. And I just want to say I really appreciate this line about being legible and readily visible. However it is put on the bag and the cup, I feel it is important to make it the norm that we just see that there is always a label on the bag. My concerns come from experience with marijuana billboards that did have the required language on it, but printed in a yellow or beige color that was not readable. It was actually, you could see there was something there, and I'm sure it was legible. So I just want to share, that's why the concern and making sure that these labels are truly legible and visible to help us make it the norm that we know there's alcohol in there and just everyone's aware.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Linda. Is there anything else anyone wants to add on this section before we go to the next section or subsection? Okay, so Jeff, if I've missed something in the chat, do let me know. But I will scroll ahead to subsection E. So this says to deter public consumption or consumption in a vehicle of alcohol products sold through curbside takeout or delivery service, licensees may not put ice directly into the containers that the alcohol products authorized for sale under this section. So again, this is just the cocktails to go, wine by the glass, etc., except for frozen or blended drinks. And ice may be provided separately along with the order. So again, if folks have feedback on what they like or don't like or would like to see changed, please go ahead and raise your hand. And I see we have one hand raised right now, Megan Moore. So go ahead and you should have the ability to go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, Audrey. Yeah, Megan Moore, Kids Hub Public Health. I really appreciate this provision. I think that it's a no cost, really easy way to deter customers from drinking the cocktail in their car and or in a public space. We know that nobody wants ice melt in their cocktails, and if your ice is melting in your cup, you're probably more likely to drink it or go to a park to drink it there. There is the provision there about the ice being provided separately. I think that this provision actually eliminates the entire purpose of the statement. But for those maybe that don't have ice at home for some reason, I think it should state something like the customer must ask for ice, or word it in some way that it doesn't standard come with a cup of ice, like you just dump in the cup of ice, but the customer must ask for it. Thanks.
Thanks for that feedback, Megan. And appreciate the suggestion for how we could look at rewording the language as well. Was there anything else anyone wanted to add on this subsection? Jeff, is there anything in the chat that I've missed?
I don't see anything in the chat about this subsection.
Okay, so I will scroll on, and if we're moving too quickly, I'll give time at the end of this this whole section on cocktails and wine by the glass, and we can revisit anything folks might have wanted to say but didn't get their hand up in time. So for this next subsection F, so the alcohol products authorized for sale, under this section, so again, that's the cocktails, wine by the glass, must be placed in the trunk of the vehicle or beyond immediate reach of the driver in compliance with the open container requirements in this other RCW before being transported off the licensee's premises. And again, that's just this other RCW is the open container law. So just including a reference to that. Is there any feedback or suggestions for revisions on this one? Okay, it looks like I see one hand at least. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, I mean, again, I understand the intent of this, but I'm thinking less about an individual coming and getting alcohol to go and more about delivery people who might have, multiple bags and boxes. It might not be feasible to put things in the trunk. So I'm wondering about more in that sort of scenario where, I mean, a delivery person is not going to be drinking their customers' drinks. As if they are, they're going to get fired. So I'm just wondering about maybe some language around that, because the last thing you want is, of course, your delivery driver to get pulled over and arrested because, the food with the booze was in the front seat.
Yep, thanks for that feedback, Tony. And if you have suggestions for how to reword this too, please let us know. My understanding is this isn't changing anything that's in our laws already, so they weren't, folks are already required under this our open container RCW, so the delivery drivers included to comply with that requirement to place things out of the reach of the driver or in a trunk area. But I get with the delivery vehicle might not have a trunk, so just beyond immediate reach. I will kind of defer to if I don't know if any of our other LCB staff that are on the line want to speak to that just a little bit, some of our enforcement staff, but if so, go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, Jeff, if there's something in the chat that I've missed, please let me know. Okay, it looks like our Policy and External Affairs Director, Justin Nordhorn, has his hand raised. So Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Audrey. Just as clarification, and I see somebody did point it out in the chat as well, but just so folks have an understanding when to think about when you offer language to us, it would be good to keep in mind that we need to have some standards around the alcohol in the vehicle in order to meet standards for the National Highway Traffic Safety, as we've seen in other states. And I believe it was Iowa that had some considerations in that particular area. So anyways, we tried to design some of this language to make sure that we're compliant with that so we don't lose any federal dollars around compliance related issues for this. So, as we look at modifying and responding to the comments being made today, just know that has to be in the back of our mind as we're looking through these. So if you have any suggestions around those, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Justin, for bringing up the National Highway Traffic Safety compliance as well. So definitely appreciate that and appreciate all the comments I see coming in. Don't have time to read through all of them now as I'm facilitating this, but Jeff, if there's something in there that I've missed that you want to call out or we need to respond to, let me know.
Thank you, Audrey.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so I will go to this next subsection for now, which is G. If the alcohol products authorized for sale under this section are sold through delivery service, so this is just related to the delivery piece. Delivery must be made by an employee of the licensed business who is at least 21 years of age and holds a Class 12 mass permit. Delivery may not be made by third-party service providers. And this is, I'll just focus on this piece for now. There are a couple more subsections in this, but delivery section. But let's just focus on this. Does anyone have suggestions for revisions, what they like, what they don't like? Okay, go ahead. Katie, I see your hand is raised.
Hello again, everyone. So our real only request in this particular section is to remove that delivery cannot be done by third-party service providers. We understand that right now there are pretty limited exceptions to the ability for third-party delivery services to do alcohol to go or deliver alcohol, whether that's beer or wine. And we know that there are currently no exceptions to spirits. However, I do believe that the third-party delivery market is rapidly evolving and changing in a way that would allow for future delivery of any alcohol products through third-party delivery services. I know that DoorDash, for example, has the ability to scan IDs. And so I think that we need to keep an open mind to what third-party delivery looks like moving forward, and to write a hard no in all three of these endorsements for third-party delivery is just a little bit disheartening to us. And then I would also add that I think it would be possible for third-party delivery services to be required to get a mask permit so that they do have that more general understanding, like our servers do or bartenders, on how to recognize signs of intoxication, how to properly read an ID, so on and so forth. And this is something that the association would happily get behind, because not only would we love to see these drivers have mask permits, we'd also love to see them have health permits, health card or food permits. So total aside and irrelevant to this particular group, but I think that there are checks and balances we could put in place for third-party delivery of any alcohol product.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Katie. Was there anything else on this section you wanted to offer?
That is it from me. And that those comments do, Audrey, apply to all three endorsements. I know that you're going to go over the other two, but in case I do drop off, because, you know, Montana life, I wanted to share that on behalf of all three of the endorsements we're going to go over today.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. And I think we had a couple other hands that I saw pop up. Looks like right now we have Brian Ream with their hand up, so I'm gonna allow your mic, and you should be able to speak now.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Excellent. Brian Ream with St. Michel Wine Estates. So I understand there is sort of a opening window for new hires with respect to the mask permit, where there's like a window within which they can pour while on a premises, but then have to have that mask permit completed after that time. I think it's like 40 days, not sure. Just wondering whether or not that's going to be, that same window will apply in this instance, you know, obviously across all of the endorsements. Thought I'd pose that.
Thanks, Brian. And that's one I'm not familiar with, so I'll have to look into that and get back to you, unless there are any other maybe licensing staff on the line that can speak to that at all. But if not, then I will follow up with you on that, Brian, afterwards. And if you want to send an email to our rules inbox, that's rules at lcb.wa.gov. That'll help me connect with you later. So, oh, thanks. Was there anything else you had to offer on this subsection?
Nope.
Okay. Megan Moore, go ahead.
Hi, I really appreciate Katie's comments about third-party delivery services and needing health cards and mask cards. That would be great. But I guess this is more of a question than anything, and maybe Justin can answer. My question is, aren't mask cards, the LCB can only enforce its licensees, and if there was non-compliance of ID checks among a third-party delivery service, like, would you even be able to enforce that third-party delivery service because they're not your licensee? So it seems like, cutting them out might be just removing some of the confusion of how to enforce non-compliance. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Megan. I don't know, Justin, if you were about to say something or not, but you're correct in that third parties aren't licensees at this point. So
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then also on the mask permit, the mask provisions are all set out by statute on who's required to get one. And so without a statutory mandate, I'm not sure that we would be able to construct rules requiring the permit to be for those third-party folks. And then, of course, there's the gap in licensing for those companies. So we'd have to navigate and kind of research some of that to see where those options would fall.
thanks, Justin, and thanks, Megan. Hopefully that answers your question, but if not, please do reach out to us outside of this forum today, and we can work with you a little more to try and answer that. And the same goes for other folks with questions. If we don't get to your question today, please do feel free to reach out to us at the rules inbox, and we'll do our best to follow up with you if we see them in the chat later too. So, Jeff, is there anything in the chat on this component? If it's not directly related to this mast in the 21 piece, I think we can go to the next subsection, which covers maybe some of the questions I was seeing about the age verification. But Jeff, were you seeing anything that we should bring up now?
No, I see a question about age verification, but it looks like it's covered in the next subsection. So I think we can go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So next subsection, at the time of delivery, the employee making the delivery must verify that the person receiving it is at least 21 years of age using an acceptable form of ID, and that's an existing WAC that it cites to there that lays out what is considered an acceptable form of ID. And then this is from the bill itself, says that upon delivery of the alcohol product, the signature of the person age 21 or over must be obtained. So again, that second sentence is directly in the bill. And is there any feedback or comments on this? And maybe Jeff, if that question we saw in the chat earlier is relevant here, or that comment, go ahead and read that out.
Okay, Audrey. The question from Joe Long: how is age verified at the time of order in the case of delivery?
Okay, I guess that is covered directly by this text. But Joel, if you want to, there's more to your question, feel free to and raise your hand, and we can unmute you so you can speak a little more on that. Okay, I see Joe's hand is raised. So go ahead, Joe. Joe, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent, thanks. Well, I guess ultimately what I was trying to understand is in the case of whether it be online or by phone, how does the licensee know that the individual is of legal age? Or is it just dependent on the recipient being of legal age?
So thanks for that that question. I think, this rule language or this draft rule language here just is about the recipient or, when the delivery itself is actually made. And, there are other existing things in law about when they sell product,
Okay.
having to, none of that, the existing requirements in law about when you sell product, having to check age are changed. This is just kind of an additional component for the delivery, having to have the delivery person do that verification.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Joe. And if there's nothing else you have to add on this one, you can go ahead and lower your hand, and I will go ahead and unmute the next person, Allison Sanders. Go ahead, Allison.
Hi, I have a question that I'm not sure if it will be addressed later, but do you need a valid ID for each drink that has been ordered? So if there's 5 meals and 5 cocktails are ordered, do you need 5 people's ID or just one person's ID for all orders?
Thanks for that question, Allison. So the rules don't get into, yeah, they don't it's not addressed later. To answer your first question, this section having to do with delivery is the only one about the ID checking, and it's not structured that you need a different ID for each person. I mean, for someone accepting a delivery. Of course, if 5 separate people are ordering, that's a different story, but hopefully that makes sense. And if not, I do want to remind folks we're trying to, get feedback on how we want to, suggestions for what we like in the rule, what we don't like, what we want to change. So for questions, we really do appreciate them, but we also want to make sure we have enough time to get through the rule language. So if I didn't cover what your question was, Allison, we can follow up outside of this meeting and make sure we get you an answer to that too. Or if you have a suggestion for wanting to put something specifically in the rule, speaking to that, let us know also. So was there anything else you wanted to add on this, or did that cover it?
No, that covered it. I think I don't know where it would go or what the language would look like yet, so I will get back to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay. This next subsection is related, if no person aged 21 or over is present to accept the alcohol product at the time of delivery, the alcohol product must be returned. An alcohol product may not be left unattended at a delivery location. So, a delivery person cannot basically just drop off a bag with alcohol in it at a doorstep is what this is trying to capture. So is there any feedback on what folks like or don't like or want to see changed? And Jeff, if I went too quickly on that other one and there's something in the chat, you can call that out too.
Hi, Audrey. We did have one question from Ron Keller, who was asking about the signature paperwork, and his question is, who will receive this paperwork?
Sorry, Jeff. Can you repeat that, or what kind of paperwork are we talking about? I don't think there was anything in the previous section about paperwork.
I believe his question was about, in the previous subsection, it says the signature of the person age 21 or over receiving the delivery must be obtained. And I think his question relates to who would receive that signature paperwork.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so the delivery person would have to collect that signature is my understanding of what the bill 1480 required, that the delivery person is the one getting that signature. And the way the draft rules are currently written, the delivery persons are employees of the licensee, so presumably they'd bring it back to the licensee. But there isn't anything in the rule right now, at least about records or keeping that information. I think it would just fall under the general practices. But Ron, if you want to raise your hand, or sorry if it wasn't Ron who asked that question, but raise your hand and speak a little more to that, or if you have language to suggest to capture that concern there, we can take a look at that. Okay, Tony's hand is up, and go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I would just, to me, I get, again, we're trying to validate, who got the booze and who received it. The signature thing, to me, it feels like it's overkill. We have a masked card holder checking ID, and that we don't have people sign receipts when they buy in a bar. So, and if you're not going to require people to retain those records, I don't really see what signing, for the booze really solves here. And I'm a big proponent for, minimizing things that my drivers have to do that, don't really seem to have any purpose. So my opinion would be, don't even bother with the signature as long as you check ID. And of course, you have to trust people at some point that they are checking IDs properly. I would just remove the signature requirement.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate that feedback. And I will just say, with the signature requirement, we are constrained by that was actually in the bill. So the legislature put that requirement in. So that's not something we can actually change in our rules. That was in the law itself. But I hear the point about the records, and certainly not something we directly contemplated in this draft rule set here. So appreciate folks bringing that up. So Jeff, is there anything else on this section that you're seeing in the chat that we need to raise now, or is it something that, if it's something we can hold for later, just let me know and we can move on to the next subsection?
Yes, I think the comments we can hold for later.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So this sub little 4 here, or IV, delivery of an alcohol product may not be made to any person who shows signs of intoxication. And this is, consistent with this other RCW. It's already out there in the law that you can't deliver to someone who shows signs of intoxication. So this is in here as a reminder, basically. But if folks have suggestions on how they'd like to see this changed, or what they like or don't like, let us know. So just want to check in, Jeff, and see if you're seeing anything that I'm not. I don't see any hands at this point.
I don't see any comments related to this subsection.
Okay, so that wraps up the delivery portions then. And I'll just check in with you again one more time, Jeff, if there's anything we missed about delivery that's in the chat that we need to raise, let me know. Otherwise, I will start highlighting this next subsection having to do with signage. Okay, so subsection H, signs provided electronically by the board regarding public consumption and transportation of any alcohol products sold through curbside, takeout, or delivery service. So again, that's, the cocktails to go, wine by the glass, must be posted in plain view, the main entrance to the area of the premises where alcohol products are sold and the areas of the premises where customers pick up alcohol products. The signs will be designed to remind customers purchasing these products to go that they must comply with applicable laws and rules, including but not limited to restrictions on consuming alcohol in public and the restrictions on having the open containers in a vehicle. So, kind of in summary, this section of the rules requires licensees to put up signs that our agency will design to focus on the to-go products, drinking in public and open containers. So is there any feedback on these, anything in this section H? Okay, Megan, I see Megan Moore has her hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for this section. There has been a lot of anecdotal stories this over COVID, especially as restaurants have been closed or limited capacity, that people are drinking in public more often. And for multiple reasons, for youth, that's not good. It's also illegal to drink in public. So a sign just reminding customers that that is the case, then I think is a great idea. And those comments are going to go for the next two sections too. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan. Yeah, and appreciate that comment about it going for the next two sections. The same signage component is in the growlers to go as well as the other alcohol products to go. And I saw a question about the time frame. I don't think we have a time frame yet on the signs, but the rules are still in the draft stage, so it wouldn't be till after the rules are finalized, which again, looking at our timeline, we're hoping to finalize things by the end of this year. So are there any other things in the chat, Jeff, about what folks like or don't like or they want to see changed?
Hi, Audrey. I don't see anything else about this section about the signs.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. And I will scroll on then. That covers the bulk of the cocktails to go section, subsections 4 and 5. So 4 just gives a reminder here of other applicable requirements that licensees still have to comply with in Title 66, Title 314 WAC. And, that's, again, the restrictions on sales to minors that's already in the laws and the intoxicated persons. So just a reminder section. And then subsection 5 sets forth some definitions. So, the bill uses the term alcohol product. So we go ahead and define that. the mini bottles, the bill actually does define what a mini bottle is. We got that question earlier. So that's the original factory sealed containers holding not more than 50 milliliters of a spirituous beverage. And then the bill uses terms such as premixed cocktail, premixed wine and spirits cocktail, and premixed wine drink. So these are not defined in the bill. So in our rule, we've put forth some ideas here about how to define them. Premixed cocktail means a drink made by combining spirits with other alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverages and ingredients, including but not limited to fruit juice, carbonated beverages, flavorings, or cream. Very similar with the premixed wine and spirits cocktail, except, limited to combining the wine and the spirits. And then the premixed wine drink, again, very similar, but it's just the wine this time. And the premixed wine drink does not include alcoholic beverages other than wine. The other definitions in here are just citing back to our existing statute that defines those terms. So no changes. So with that, I'll open that up, the definition section and the other section that just cites back to the other applicable laws and rules for comment. So if anyone has thoughts about what they like or don't like about these definitions or what they want to see changed, go ahead and raise your hand or put something in the chat. So I know I went through those kind of quickly, but if there's any portion of that you want to focus in on, go ahead and raise your hand and we can get to your comment. So I'm not seeing any hands at this point. So Jeff, I'm going to just check in with you, and if you could check on the chat. I do see one hand now, so I'll go ahead and let Mary Sagawa speak. So go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, Audrey. This is not in here, and I don't know if it's in the statute, so I wanted to mention it. I know that Idaho, in their regulations, state that that all transactions need to take place at the licensed premises, whether that's in person or by phone. And they specifically state that no money may be exchanged between the delivery person and the customer upon delivery. And I would just like to recommend that something along those lines be added if it's not already in statute, just to help ensure that the transactions are all recorded and above board. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback, Mary. You're correct. That's not currently in our rules, or wasn't in the bill either, about contemplating where the transactions have to occur. If there is language you have seen from Idaho or somewhere else that you think would be appropriate here, go ahead and put it in the chat or send it to us too, and we'll consider it. So yeah, at this point it's not contemplated. Oh, go ahead, Mary. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Thank you. I will send you the information from Idaho. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, are we seeing anything else in the chat about the definitions, or at this point we're at the end of this section, so if we can circle back for anything we might have missed too, because the last subsection in here is just the expiration date, which is the July 1, 2023, and that's what the bill said. So just a reminder, these are temporary, a temporary endorsement at this point. So
Hi, Audrey. I don't see anything regarding definitions in the chat.
okay. And is there anything that we missed earlier that we need to circle back to? And folks, if we missed something that you put in earlier and you feel we didn't you had a feedback you wanted to offer and we didn't get to it, now's a good time to raise your hand on just the cocktails piece. So after this, we'll take a short break and then we'll come back and we'll start on the other two endorsements, the growlers and the alcohol products to go.
Hi, Audrey. There are a couple of comments in the chat I don't think that we got to regarding identification. There's a comment from Allison Sanders saying, I would like to see an ID checked for each drink ordered. This would cut down on the likelihood of a person 21 plus buying alcohol for underage youth. There's a comment from Amanda Duggar, or a question, could there be wording that states that there would only be one drink per ID? I see those two.
Okay. Well, thank you both for offering those comments, and we'll consider those when we go through and compile the feedback from today. Okay, so I will, if there's nothing else on this section, I will pull back up our agenda here, see how we're doing. So looks like we're a little bit behind, but I'll go ahead and we'll come back in 5 minutes. So let's just say at 2:43, if we could all come back at 2:43, we'll start on the other two endorsements at this time. So we'll just take a quick 5-minute break. Thanks, everyone. Okay, it is 2:43, so welcome back, everyone. We'll turn now to our review of the conceptual draft rules for the sale of the alcohol products and the manufacturer sealed ones. So I will pull up that portion of the rules and we'll go through them again as we did before. There are some similarities with signage requirements and things like that between the previous one. But feel free to repeat your comment, or if you've already made your point, don't feel like you need to raise your hand again, but don't feel limited either. So I'm gonna scroll up. This is the first subsection in the draft, 314.03.500, temporary endorsement for sale of alcohol products through curbside takeout or delivery service. Again, as with the other one, the bill 1480, says the endorsement, it's temporary, it's available until July 1, 2023. There's no fee for a licensee to apply for and obtain this endorsement. So if there's any feedback on this, please go ahead and raise your hand. Since that's pretty straightforward, though, I'm going to go right on ahead and highlight this second subsection. So consistent with 1480, it says which licensees are eligible for the endorsement. So whereas with the cocktails to go and wine by the glass, that was just the spirit beer wine and beer wine restaurants. Now we have a wider range of licensees that this endorsement is available to. So again, the restaurants, but also now the taverns, domestic wineries, domestic breweries and microbreweries, distilleries, snack bars, nonprofit arts licenses, and caterers. So I just want to highlight again, this is from the bill and what it allows. So I see looks like we have hand up from both Katie Doyle and Annie McGrath. And I'm sorry, I didn't see who raised their hand first, but on my screen, Katie, you're at the top. So I will go ahead and unmute you and
Hi, Audrey. I was able to unmute myself because you gave me the power. So I don't have a comment. I actually have a question. If I'm a spirits, beer, and wine licensee, do I need to then apply for multiple endorsements, or does the endorsement we covered in the last section apply to all alcohol products, cocktails, and then growlers?
So good question. These are 3 separate endorsements, so they would need to get the different endorsements is my understanding, and maybe someone from licensing can also, if you want to raise your hand and chime in. But so the endorsement we covered prior to this one, that's just for the cocktails to go and wine by the glass. So if they also want to do these manufacturer sealed products, so like the can of beer or what have you, that would be a separate endorsement. Same with the growlers, a separate endorsement. And I see before we get to Annie, Jeannie, if you want to go ahead, this is one of our, it's our licensing assistant director. Go ahead.
Yeah, so they will be separate endorsements, and part of that is because the bill calls for a study on the impacts of these endorsements, and so we want to be able to provide as much information for that study as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeannie, and hopefully that covers your question, Katie. And if not, feel free to raise your hand again, or I see you put in the chat. That's helpful. So great. We'll turn to Annie now, and Annie, you should have the ability to unmute.
I do. Thank you, Audrey, and the rest of your rulemaking team and policy teams for putting this together and hearing us today. I have a suggestion. In looking at this particular endorsement, it authorizes curbside takeout and delivery service. But as non-retail licensees, breweries already have retailing privileges to do takeout, and then we also do internet sales deliveries. And so when we get further into this endorsement, some of the requirements are inconsistent with what we are already allowed to do under that. So our suggestion would be that you would create a separate endorsement for non-retail that would apply just to breweries and potentially wineries if they line up with this on, or if they line up with us on this, that would only include the new temporary privileges. And as far as I can tell, the new temporary privileges would include for us curbside, and then creeping into the growlers discussion, the delivery for growlers, and also the pre-fills. So those are the things that we've identified as being the new temporary allowances for our licensees. And we would appreciate a separate endorsement so that everything stays really consistent and that the rules stay consistent for what we are already allowed to do under our license.
Thanks for that feedback, Annie. And I may want to follow up with you more on what that might look like, or what if you have any language to suggest for that. I think what I heard was carving out just the new privilege of, in this case for this endorsement, curbside, and kind of isolating that so there's not a duplication. But I want to follow up more on that, because the bill did kind of just lump all of these together as one endorsement. So I'm not sure at this point, what that would look like, if we'd be able to carve it out in that way. Is there anything else you have to add or suggest in terms of language? Or
I'm happy to follow up with some language. I don't have anything ready as of today, but we do have some ideas about how a separate endorsement might cover the new temporary privileges without overlapping and adding new requirements or inconsistencies to what we're currently doing and have been doing.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I guess we will follow up separately on this, and you can email us about what that might look like, so we can kind of eliminate some of that overlap, and whether or not that's a separate endorsement, or maybe some way to just clarify in here that this endorsement doesn't cause any of those overlapping problems. We can try and work on a solution for that. I would just note this new endorsement isn't intended to take away from any of the previous or pre-existing or current privileges that breweries or other non-retail might have. So it's not supposed to take away from any of that, just add on and be additive. Is there anything else you wanted to add on that?
No, thank you, Audrey. And I'll probably pipe in when we go through the separate sections, and kind of I'll point out where some of the inconsistencies might be between what we're already doing and what this particular endorsement would require, if that's helpful.
Great. Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jeff, is there anything we might have missed in the chat at all about this section?
Oh, hi, Audrey. I see a question from Ron Keller. He, I think, is related to this subsection. He asks, how about just nonprofits such as moose lodges? How would this apply?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm not sure I'm able to answer that if they're not listed. I think moose lodges, private clubs, that category is not specifically called out by the bill for this section. This list of the licensees here does cover nonprofit arts licenses, but not, the other types of private clubs. So the answer might be that this doesn't directly apply to that type of license. But we can follow up individually if you have a question Ron, if you shoot that to our email address, we can look into your specific situation as well. Okay, so was there anything else, Jeff, in the chat?
I don't see anything else related here.
Okay, so I will move down to subsection 3. So this is the bulk of the requirements, describes what licensees, the requirements that licensees that want to obtain this endorsement have to comply with. So the first piece here, the alcohol products must be sold in closed factory or manufacturer sealed packages or containers. So, this is not the cocktails to go type of situation where it's in a cup or with the tamper evidence seal. This is a manufacturer sealed. So that's the distinction. If there's any feedback on that, please do feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. I'm going to move ahead and scroll to B, and I know we covered this in the previous one, but if the alcohol product is enclosed inside a bag, box, or other packaging before being provided to the customer, that exterior of that packaging must be clearly marked or labeled with the words contains alcohol for persons 21 plus in a size that's legible and readily visible. And I do want to point out the difference here between this and the cocktails to go is you don't have to put, the rules don't require you to put a label or a marking on your closed manufacturer sealed product. It's just on, if it's in a bag or a box where you can't see what's inside, then it would need that labeling or requirement. So I will open that one up for feedback. Please do share what you like or don't like, what you want to see changed. Okay, I see a couple hands. Annie McGrath, go ahead.
Thank you. So this would be one of the areas that would be inconsistent with what is current practice in a brewery. If a case of beer goes out of the brewery, that case is going to have packaging that is very clear that it is beer already. So adding another sticker that says contains alcohol for persons of 21 plus would be a step further than currently breweries are doing when they are making to-go sales. And I think it's where we're just a little bit different in that our product is already going to be packaged by the manufacturer and clearly beer when it's leaving our premise.
Thank you, Annie. Appreciate that example there. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we go to the next comment?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. So we also have Megan Moore. Go ahead, Megan.
Hello, I appreciate this provision here. Just an example, I'm sure everybody's seen this if they've done grocery delivery. If you get a bottle of wine or beer, even pre-mixed, already manufactured sealed cocktails to go in your grocery delivery, the bag that contains the product in it will have a sticker or some other indicator suggesting that that is the specific bag with the alcohol in it. And I know a lot of businesses are already doing this. I think that youth access wise, this is the best practice. So thank you for adding this provision.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate that feedback. If there's nothing else, Annie, I see your hand still up. I don't know if you had something additional to add or, okay, I see it went down. So I will turn then to Jeff and see if we've gotten anything in the chat.
Hi, Audrey. I don't see anything new in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So I will go now to the next section. And again, this is very similar, not exactly the same, but very similar to what we had for the cocktails to go in terms of delivery service requirements. So the difference here in this first section, delivery must be made by an employee of the licensed business who is at least 21 years of age. Delivery may not be made by third-party service providers. And you'll notice that it doesn't specifically call out the master requirement, and that's because not all of the license types that are eligible for this endorsement, um, necessarily have employees that have that requirement. So um, happy to hear feedback on what folks like, don't like, what they'd like to see changed. So I see Annie, your hand is up again. Go ahead.
Thank you. Again, this was one area that we had marked up with a question mark because breweries that hold an internet sales endorsement may make deliveries of their product currently, and we are allowed to use private carriers in that instance. And so this would be another area where we would wonder which endorsement took precedent over the other.
Thanks for that feedback. Right, yeah. So under other endorsements that breweries can already get, the internet sales endorsement, they can do the third-party delivery. And certainly if folks already had that endorsement or they decide to get that endorsement, they would not have to. Their privilege would fall under that and not under this, if that makes sense. But I can see the confusion with the overlap there. So thanks for pointing that out, and need to think more about. I'll need to think more about what kind of things we can do to clarify that situation where there is overlap. If someone has two endorsements, I will turn to Jeff now to look at the chat. Unless Annie, do you have anything else you wanted to offer on this? Okay. If there's nothing in the chat, Jeff, I'm going to scroll down to this next sub 2. So this is the same as was in the cocktails to go. At the time of delivery, the employee making the delivery must verify the person receiving the delivery is at least 21 years of age using an acceptable form of ID. And then from 1480, we have the requirement that the signature of the person receiving the delivery must be obtained. Again, we didn't have anything in here currently about record keeping. The bill did not speak specifically to record keeping, but those same comments that folks brought up before, I think, equally apply to this language. If there's anything new or additional thoughts, anyone wants to offer what they like, don't like, ideas for new language we could put in, please go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands on this, and Jeff, just jump in if you see something in the chat that we have missed, but I'm going to go ahead and go to sub 3. So this is the same from before as well. If no one 21 or over is present to accept the alcohol product at the time of delivery, the alcohol product must be returned, and the alcohol product may not be left unattended at the delivery location. So that was also in the cocktails to go, and we will see it again in the growlers as well as sub little Roman numeral 4 about the delivery not being made to anyone who shows signs of intoxication. So if anyone has feedback on this delivery portion at all that we haven't gotten to, go ahead and raise your hand.
Hi, Audrey. This is Jeff. I I do see a question in the chat, and I'm not sure the context of this question, but it's from Pat Caffall, and Pat asks, so I guess I just don't put to-go alcohol in a bag? And I'm not sure, I don't understand the question exactly. So Pat, if you want to elaborate on your question, please raise your hand or respond in the chat. Thanks.
Okay, I see Pat has their hand raised, so go ahead, Pat. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Got it. Sorry about that. Yeah, my question was, there was a lot of feedback on the stickering of the bags and all of that, and as it pertained to beer to go. I mean, basically what it was implying that if you were to put must put stickers on the bags that say this bag contains alcohol, it seems like the workaround, or the most obvious workaround that a lot of places would do, would just be not serve alcohol to go in a bag. Is that, I guess it was kind of an open-ended question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me, Pat. And I think what you said could definitely work under the rules. There's nothing that says you have to put your drink in a bag. So,
right.
Or a
so
box.
If we make a rule that's cumbersome for everybody to sticker the bags and all that, they're just going to say, well, here's your to-go, and use your own bag.
Right, or leave the alcohol out of the bag, but have the food in the bag or something like that.
Exactly. So just wanted to put that out there.
Well, we appreciate that comment and that feedback. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The rules allow that flexibility, and if it is too burdensome to put the product in the bag, that's not a requirement that you do so, and that would make it clear to folks that this is alcohol. It wouldn't be hidden in the bag somewhere. So that's addressing some of those other concerns we've heard from some of the public health folks on the line today.
Right. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Pat. And I see we have maybe another comment in the chat that came in. Ramona, did you want to raise your hand and speak to that at all? Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up, but Jeff, if you saw something come in the chat that I've missed, please feel free to read it out or let me know.
Thanks, Audrey. I only see Ramona's question.
I haven't had a chance to fully read it, so if it's related, Jeff, feel free to read it out, or if it's something we should get to later, we can get to it later.
I'm not sure. I'll read it out. Would this, having the ability to deliver product, be the time to require masked training for the delivery people for these licensees?
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand that one either right now, but Ramona, happy to follow up with you afterwards and see if we can answer your question. Or if you want to speak to it more, please feel free to raise your hand and we can go ahead and unmute you too. Okay, so if there's nothing else, the next piece in here has to do with the signs. This is the exact same from the cocktails to go about the signage that will be designed by our agency to remind customers purchasing alcohol products to go that they have to comply with those public consumption and open container laws. So any licensee that has this to go endorsement would be required to post those signs at these locations on the premises. So the main area and the area where customers pick up alcohol for takeout or curbside or delivery. So I know we got some feedback on this before, so if there's nothing new on this one, I do see Pat, your hand is still raised. Did you want to speak to this? If so, go ahead and, okay. Thanks for lowering your hand. I know I always forget mine's up too, so. Jeff, is there anything in the chat that came in? Okay, well, Jeff, go
No,
ahead and,
no,
oh,
Audrey,
sorry.
I don't see anything. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you looking through the chat. Okay, well, that is the bulk of the alcohol to go, the manufacturer sealed alcohol to go section. What we have now is this sub 4 says it, in addition to the requirements in this section, licensees must comply with all applicable requirements in Title 66 RCW, Title 3 and 4 WAC, and any other applicable laws and rules. So just a reminder to folks, the other existing laws and rules that are out there, you still have to comply with those when we're making these sales. So if it's a keg, there's keg sale requirements. If you always have to comply with the minors and intoxicated persons laws as well. So that's just a reminder section. And then we have the definition section. So alcohol product is used in the bill, but it's not defined. So we put a definition in the rule here that speaks to that, try and clarify that in this case, this endorsement's just for those, alcohol products that are not covered by those other 2 temporary endorsements. So, that the premixed cocktails, wine by the glass, premixed wine and spirits cocktails are growlers. So these WAC references are to the cocktails to go and the new growlers WAC. And this one's actually just a typo that I'll be getting rid of. But so this is a new definition we're putting in, and then the definition of factory sealed or manufacturer sealed means that a package or container is in 100% resellable condition with all manufacturer seals intact. So again, not to help distinguish from the cocktails to go. So it's not a cocktail to go. This is something that's been sealed by the manufacturer. We have our expiration date as well, which was included in 1480. It's a temporary endorsement, expires July 1, 2023. So that concludes this endorsement on the alcohol to go. We still have one more on the growlers, but want to pause here and see if there's feedback folks have just in general about this section, something we didn't get to earlier, or feedback on the definitions at all. So I will just check the chat really quickly. And Jeff, if you see something, let me know too. I'm not seeing hands at this point.
Hi, Audrey. I don't see any new questions.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your feedback on this section. I'm not seeing anything else either, but if we've missed you again, please feel free to raise your hand. So with that, we'll turn to our temporary endorsement for the sale of growlers to go. Some of the language is very similar to what we went through. There are some differences which I'll highlight as we go through. Okay, so on the draft rules, this starts on page 12. It's the new section, WAC 31403.510, temporary endorsement for sale of growlers through curbside takeout or delivery service. Again, sub 1, this just states what was in the bill, which is that this is temporary, only available till July 1, 2023, unless it gets extended by the legislature. There's no fee for a licensee to apply for or obtain this endorsement. And then this is the licensees eligible. So as stated in House Bill 1480, this endorsement for the growlers to go is available to licensees that were authorized by statute or rule before January 1, 2020 to sell growlers. So it didn't list out specifically which licensees that would apply to in the bill, but we went and identified what those licensees would be here. So that includes these folks. We've got taverns, beer and wine restaurants, spirit beer and wine restaurants, grocery stores, beer and wine specialty shops, breweries, microbreweries, wineries, combination spirits, beer and wine licensees, and hotel licensees. So these were all the licensees we identified that were authorized by statute or rule before January 1, 2020 to sell growlers. Is there any feedback, comments, suggestions on this piece? So this is connected, and if I'm going too quickly, feel free to still speak on that earlier piece, but this is connected for beer wine specialty shop, to be eligible for the endorsement for the growlers to go. The beer wine specialty shop still has to meet the requirement in the RCW for the beer wine specialty shops. That's RCW 6624-3713, as it existed prior to when the bill specified. So December 31st, 2019, that the licensee's beer wine sales must be more than 50% of the licensee's total sales. And that's not something new, just restating it here to clarify, this is for folks that were eligible before January 1, 2020. So Jeff, was there anything that came in the chat? I thought I might have seen something pop in. I'm not seeing any hands at this point.
No, hi, Audrey. We received a comment from Amanda Duggar. A comment as follows. The concern I have for curbside pickup is setting the norm for our youth about consuming alcohol at home and the easy access for our youth to consume alcohol. Also, as one of the facilitators for DUI victims panel, by giving adults more access to consuming alcohol can increase the likelihood of driving under the influence. Thank you for your time and willingness to hear the community members' input. That's a comment, no question that I can identify. And there's a comment from Ron Keller stating that nonprofits should be allowed also. That's the only comments I see.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks, Amanda and Ron. And I'm looking at this list again, Ron. This list is what we were able to identify within the agency for the folks that were allowed before January 1, 2020 to sell growlers to go. So if we missed one, when you say nonprofits, do you want to speak to that a little bit more? Does your nonprofit currently, were they allowed prior to sell growlers, or I don't know if you want to speak to that or clarify that at all. Okay, I see in the chat Ron put no, so we appreciate that comment. Again, that's one of those things where the bill just, the law reads a certain way and we don't really have the flexibility to go in and expand it where it wasn't authorized by the legislature. But we appreciate that feedback. So I see, Ron, why don't you go ahead and, are you able to unmute yourself and talk? Because I see you putting a couple more things in the chat. So let me, Jeff, can you find Ron in the attendee list and unmute them and see if they want to speak at all?
I will look, Audrey.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And Ron, if you do raise your hand, it's easier for us to find you to unmute you. I see that you put you're a restaurant, but in case if you are a restaurant, we'll just note again, this licensees that are eligible for growlers to grow and do include the beer wine restaurants and the spirit beer wine restaurants. So, okay, I do see you now. So go ahead, Ron, and you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, I guess we're still having the technical difficulties with your mic there. Sorry, Ron, about that. I apologize. We weren't able to get you to speak on that. We'll review your comments later. I see you put more in there. I'll move on to the next section now. I'm not seeing any other hands at this point. So going into the bulk of this section where we list what the requirements are for licensees to obtain this endorsement. 3A, sale of growlers must meet federal alcohol and tobacco tax and trade bureau requirements. That was language from the bill, House Bill 1480. So the TTB requirements must still be met. Growlers must be filled at the tap by the licensee at the time of sale, except that beer, wine, specialty shops, and domestic breweries can sell pre-filled growlers, and those pre-filled growlers must be sold the same day they're prepared for sale, not stored overnight. This was a privilege that was specifically called out with House Bill 1480, Section 2.7. So that we don't have a whole lot of flexibility with this, but if you have suggestions or feedback for what we could do differently with the rule language, please go ahead and raise your hand. And I see, Annie, your hand is raised, so go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. We just had one suggestion on this, and it's just like some clarity language for enforcement purposes. But if there were a line that we could add in that micro and domestic breweries packaged product that meets TTB labeling requirements are not subject to the overnight storage prohibition, we think that might go a long way to clear up any confusion regarding whether it's a growler or if it's actually packaged product by the manufacturer. I know that those 64-ounce glass jugs are often thought of as growlers, but if we have the appropriate labeling on it that meets the COLA requirements and it's sealed, it's then treated as packaged product and taxed that way. So it's just a suggestion for enforcement purposes and clarity for the licensees.
Thank you, Annie. Appreciate that feedback. Yeah, it sounds like we can pretty much, I'll go back and listen to the sentence you just said, and that sounds like language that might fit in, or if you have a sentence you're suggesting that you'd like us to consider, feel free to put that directly in the chat too. An exception, it sounds like, for those TTB, those products that have already met COLA and are sealed and packaged. So if there's specific phrasing you can think of that you want us to consider to put in there, let us know.
Great, thank you. We'll put something together and I will be sure to get that to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any other hands on this section or comments from the chat? Jeff, let me know if there are any. Otherwise, I'm going to scroll to this next one here. Growlers. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't see any others, Audrey.
Okay. So for subsection C, growlers must be filled with alcohol products such as beer, wine, or cider that the licensee was authorized by statute or rule before January 1, 2020 to sell in growlers. So, just clarifying here what types of things can be filled. It's the products that they were licensee was authorized before January 1, 2020 to sell. And that's from the bill, again, tying it to that date of January 1, 2020. So we're not adding new product types. If there's any feedback or thoughts, please go ahead and raise your hand. And Annie, I see your hand is up. I'm not sure if that's still from the previous one, but if not, go ahead and. Okay. Not seeing any hands at this point. So I will move on to the next section, which this is the same language we saw in our draft for the alcohol products to go. So the delivery service requirements, including, delivery must be made by an employee of the licensed business who's at least 21, and delivery may not be made by third-party service providers. Verification of age must be done using that acceptable form of ID. The signatures must be obtained, and if no one over 21 is present to accept the delivery, the product must be returned. Alcohol products may not be left unattended at the delivery location. So in this case, if the growler is delivered, can't leave it just on the doorstep. So the same requirements from the previous endorsement we looked at, as well as that intoxication piece. So we may have already covered everything on this, but if there's anything new, please go ahead and let us know. Okay, and the same goes for, since I'm not seeing anything in the hands and I see the chat, thanks Megan, it's the same comments as from before. So I know this can be kind of repetitive, but this next subsection is also regarding the signage. So we looked at that already, the signage regarding the public consumption as well as the open container laws. LCB will design a sign to remind customers that are purchasing these to-go growlers. In this case, they have to comply with the applicable open container public consumption laws. So same signage requirement there. If there's any new feedback on the signage, please go ahead and raise your hand or put it in the chat. These next two sections are the sections related to, just the reminder that licensees still have to comply with all other applicable laws and rules, including those restrictions on the sales to minors and intoxicated persons. And then in sub 5, we have our definitions. So cross-referencing what's in the statute. Beer has a definition already in statute. Cross-reference that here. Cider has a definition. Growlers was actually defined in the bill. So the bill, House Bill 1480, defines growlers as sanitary containers brought to the premises by the purchaser or furnished by the licensee and filled by the retailer at the time of sale. Wine, again, cross-referenced there, and then we have the expiration date. So again, the bill says this is a temporary endorsement. It expires July 1, 2023, unless it's extended. So unless it's extended by the legislature. So there's that's the entire draft endorsement. If there's anything we missed that you put in the chat you want to cover, feel free to raise your hand now. I think I did see something come in from the chat. So Jeff, if that's on topic, go ahead and.
Yeah, it's a short question from Laurel Sumner. And the question is, delivery drivers are not required to have a mask permit?
Thank you, Laurel. So correct, this delivery requirement for the growlers to go doesn't include the mask requirement. So out of these 3 endorsements, the one that included the mask was the cocktails to go. And that has to do with the licensee types that this is available to. But we are happy to take into consideration whatever thoughts or feedback you have on that. If you want to speak on your question or kind of phrase it more as a comment as to what you'd like to see, we'd love to hear that as well. So feel free to raise your hand if that's the case. So I'm not seeing any hands at this point. Laurel, if that covered your answer, if that didn't cover your answer, feel free to reach, or your question, excuse me, feel free to reach out again, and we can circle back to that. So with that, we've covered all of the sections in the bill. Excuse me, all of the sections in our rule draft that were on the agenda for today. And I want to just take a moment here to wrap up and talk about next steps. So after today's meeting or today's session, I'll go through, review this recording, compile the comments and the feedback we've received, and put it into a comment table to share with the board members and other internal staff so we can consider these revisions and figure out what sort of changes we may need to make to the conceptual draft rule language before getting to the rule proposal stage. So our next steps here, just to complete that review, in a couple weeks, we will also be holding a listen and learn session on the other components of 1480. So House Bill 1480 also requires the LCB to do rulemaking on outdoor alcohol service areas, as well as consider rulemaking on food service requirements. So for those 2 portions of the 1480 implementation, we'll have a separate listen and learn. Date is still to be announced, to be decided, but we'll send it out through Gov Delivery as well. So we're hoping to get good feedback on that today. And I really appreciate everyone's comments, everyone who took the time to listen in and talk and share their views or put it in the chat. And feel free again to reach out to us. I will put these slides up on our website when the recording is available. And these are some resources if you're interested in learning more about the bill itself. We have some links here about bill information, rulemaking information, and as well as the COVID-19 guidance. You can reach out to me. My email address is up on the screen, audrey.basic@lcb.wa.gov, and I will put in the chat our rules inbox email. You can reach us there as well. So thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And that concludes our meeting.